What if I told you there are 15 crops that grow faster, feed you better, and cost almost nothing to maintain, but most people will never hear about them? Not because they don't work, because they work too well. I'm talking about plants that can produce more protein per square foot than a cattle ranch. Plants that grow in water you'd normally throw away. Plants that were staple foods for thousands of years until they were reclassified, restricted, or quietly removed from the conversation. And I'm going to show you every single one, how to grow them, and why you probably should have started years ago. Welcome back. If you're new here, this channel exists for one reason: to expose the plants that make you independent. The ones that don't need a supply chain, a prescription, or a corporation's permission. These aren't heirlooms or hobby crops. These are survival tools. And if that sounds like something you want to be part of, subscribe now. You're going to need this information. Let's start with the first one. And I need you to understand something right away. Amaranth grain contains 14 to 17% protein. That's higher than wheat, higher than rice. And it includes lysine, an amino acid most grains don't have, which means it's a complete protein when combined with almost anything. The leaves, which most people ignore, contain more iron than spinach and 3 times the calcium of most leafy greens. This is a crop that can feed you twice. Grain in the fall, greens all summer. Now here's where it gets interesting. Amaranth was a sacred crop to the Aztecs. It was used in religious ceremonies. When the Spanish arrived, they didn't just ban the ceremonies. They banned the plant. Growing it became punishable by death. Because you can't control a population that doesn't need you for food. Amaranth grows in poor soil, needs almost no water, and produces up to 500,000 seeds per plant. It made people resilient. That was the problem. Today, amaranth isn't banned. But it's also not taught. It's not subsidized. It's not in the grocery store. It's technically classified as a noxious weed in some states, which makes selling the seed complicated. But you can still grow it. And you should. It grows in zones 3 through 10. It tolerates drought, heat, and soil that would kill most vegetables. You direct seed after the last frost, thin to 12 inches apart, and start harvesting leaves in 30 days. The seed heads mature in 90 to 120 days depending on variety. No fertilizer required. No pesticides. It actually thrives on neglect. When food prices double, this is the crop that keeps you fed. Next, Moringa. If you've heard of it, you probably think it's some overpriced superfood powder sold in health stores. It is. But it's also a tree you can grow in your backyard, and the reason it's not everywhere is because it makes too many industries obsolete at once. Moringa leaves contain 7 times the vitamin C of oranges, 4 times the calcium of milk, 3 times the potassium of bananas, 25% protein by dry weight, with all 9 essential amino acids. It's one of the only plant sources on Earth that qualifies as a complete protein without combination. The leaves, the pods, the seeds, the roots, all edible. The seeds purify water. The oil doesn't go rancid. This is not a supplement. This is a survival system in a single tree. And it's fast. Moringa grows 10 feet in 1 year. You can start harvesting leaves in 60 days. In the tropics, you can harvest every 30 days indefinitely. It grows in zones 9 through 11, but it'll grow as an annual anywhere with a long hot summer. It tolerates poor soil, drought, and neglect. The only thing it won't tolerate is cold. Below freezing kills it. So why isn't it planted in every backyard in the South? Because it makes you independent. You don't need a multivitamin. You don't need protein powder. You don't need fortified cereal or supplements. And if enough people grew it, you wouldn't need the companies that sell those things. Moringa has been used by NGOs to treat malnutrition in Africa and Asia for decades. It works. But it's not marketed in the West as a crop. It's marketed as a product. That tells you everything. Third on the list. Katuk, also called sweet leaf or star gooseberry. And this one is so controversial that it's actually restricted in some states, not because it's dangerous, but because it works too well as a Galactagogue. Katuk is a perennial shrub that grows in zones 8 through 11. The leaves contain 8% protein, high levels of vitamins A, C, and K, and compounds that increase milk production in nursing mothers. In Southeast Asia, it's a common backyard green. In the United States, the FDA has raised concerns about its use as a supplement, and some states restrict its sale. Not its cultivation. Its sale. That's an important distinction. Because Katuk contains papaverine, an alkaloid that has mild medicinal effects. It's not dangerous. It's not hallucinogenic. It's just bioactive. And bioactive plants make regulators nervous, especially when they're easy to grow and can't be patented. You can grow Katuk from cuttings. It prefers partial shade, regular water, and rich soil, but it'll grow in less. You can start harvesting leaves in 60 days, and it produces year-round in frost-free climates. The leaves taste like peas. You eat them raw, steamed, or in soup. One shrub produces enough greens for a family. And if you're nursing or know someone who is, this plant has been used traditionally for thousands of years. That knowledge didn't disappear by accident. Let's talk about something even more suppressed. Comfrey. And I need to be very clear here. Comfrey is legal to grow. It is not legal to sell as food or supplement in most places. But that's not because it's poison. It's because it threatens a very profitable industry. Comfrey leaves contain more protein than any other green I'm aware of. They also contain allantoin, a compound that accelerates cell growth and healing. It's been used for centuries as a topical poultice for wounds and broken bones. Internally, it was used as food and medicine. Then, in the 1980s, studies found that comfrey contains pyrrolizidine alkaloids, which can damage the liver in extremely high doses over long periods. The result? Most countries banned internal use. But here's what they didn't tell you. The varieties of comfrey used traditionally, like Russian comfrey, contain far lower levels of those alkaloids than the species used in the studies. And the dose required to cause harm is massive and sustained. You'd have to eat it as your primary food for months. But the regulatory response wasn't proportional. It was absolute. And now, an entire generation thinks comfrey is toxic. Meanwhile, comfrey is one of the best fertilizer plants on Earth. It mines nutrients from deep soil with a 10-foot taproot and concentrates them in the leaves. You cut it, mulch it, and your garden explodes. It grows in zones 3 through 9. It tolerates wet soil, dry soil, and shade. You plant it once, and it produces for 20 years. You can harvest it up to 5 times per season. And yes, people still eat it. They just don't talk about it. If you want to grow your own fertility, your own medicine, and your own livestock feed without buying a single bag of input, comfrey is the answer. The fact that it's been functionally banned as food should tell you how powerful it is. Next, Purslane. This one isn't banned. It's just ignored. And that's almost worse, because Purslane grows everywhere, costs nothing, and has more omega-3 fatty acids than almost any other plant. Purslane contains more alpha-linolenic acid than spinach, kale, or any common green. It's higher in omega-3s than some fish oils by weight. It also has high levels of vitamins A, C, and E, plus magnesium, calcium, and potassium. This is a weed. It grows in cracks in the sidewalk. And it's more nutritious than 90% of what's in the produce aisle. So why don't people eat it? Because it's free. You can't sell what grows on its own. Purslane self-seeds aggressively. It grows in full sun, poor soil, and needs almost no water. In most gardens, people pull it out and throw it away. In most of the world, they eat it. You can grow Purslane intentionally by scattering seeds in spring after the last frost. It germinates in 5 to 7 days. You can start harvesting in 3 weeks, and it regrows after cutting. It tastes lemony, slightly salty, crisp. You eat it raw in salads or cooked like spinach. And because it's so high in omega-3s, it's one of the few plants that can actually help balance your fatty acid ratio without fish or flax. The fact that Purslane is classified as a weed in most agriculture textbooks, despite being more nutritious than most crops, tells you what the system values. Scarcity, control, dependency. Purslane offers none of that. Let's move to something bigger. Chaya, also called tree spinach. And if you've never heard of it, that's because it only grows in warm climates and it makes you far too self-sufficient for comfort. Chaya is a perennial shrub that grows in zones 9 through 11. The leaves contain more protein than spinach, more calcium than milk, and more iron than red meat by weight. It's also high in vitamins A, C, and several B vitamins. One plant produces hundreds of pounds of greens per year. You can harvest it every week. It grows in poor soil, tolerates drought, and needs no fertilizer. There's one catch. You have to cook it. Raw chaya contains cyanogenic glycosides, which release cyanide when chewed. Cooking for 5 minutes destroys them completely. This isn't dangerous. Cassava has the same issue. So do lima beans. It's just preparation. But because of that requirement, chaya is often dismissed as risky or complicated. It's not. It's one of the most productive perennial greens on Earth. In Central America, it's a staple. In the United States, it's almost unknown. You can grow it from cuttings. It roots easily. You plant it once, and it produces for decades. If you live in a warm climate and you're not growing chaya, you're missing one of the most reliable food sources available. Now let's talk about something most people think is illegal. Specifically, hemp seed and hemp greens. And I need to be very clear about what I'm saying here. Industrial hemp is legal to grow in the United States under federal law as of the 2018 Farm Bill. It's defined as cannabis with less than 0.3% THC. You need a license in most states, but it's not hard to get. Hemp seed is one of the most complete plant proteins available. It contains all 9 essential amino acids in ratios similar to meat and eggs. It's 30% protein by weight. It's rich in omega-3 and omega-6 fatty acids in a 3-to-1 ratio, which is nearly ideal for human health. Hemp also produces more protein per acre than soy. It grows faster. It needs less water. It improves soil. And it was banned for nearly a century, not because of its drug content, but because it competed with cotton, timber, and synthetic fibers. Today, you can buy hemp seed in stores. You can buy hemp protein powder. But very few people grow it. Because the licensing process is intimidating. Because there's still stigma. And because if people realized how easy it is to grow a complete protein in 90 days with no fertilizer, it would disrupt the entire plant-based protein industry. Hemp tolerates poor soil, drought, and heat. It grows in zones 3 through 10. You direct seed in spring. You harvest seed in 90 to 120 days. The greens are edible when young. The seed stores for years. This is a crop that could replace half your grocery bill. That's why it was suppressed. And that's why you should grow it. Let's go smaller. Duckweed. And I know what you're thinking. This is pond scum. How is this food? But duckweed is 40% protein by dry weight. It's one of the fastest growing plants on Earth. It doubles its mass every 2 to 3 days. And it grows in water you can't use for anything else. Duckweed contains all 9 essential amino acids. It's high in vitamins A and B. It's been studied as a protein source for livestock, aquaculture, and human consumption. It's already eaten in parts of Asia. It grows in stagnant water, requires no soil, no fertilizer, and no maintenance. You can grow it in a kiddie pool in your backyard. So why isn't it everywhere? Because it looks like something you'd skim off a swamp. Because it challenges the idea that protein has to come from animals or processed plants. And because a crop that doubles every 3 days is impossible to monetize. You can't create scarcity around something that grows itself. If you raise chickens, ducks, or fish, duckweed is free feed. If you're looking for emergency protein, duckweed is one of the most reliable sources on Earth. You harvest it with a net. You dry it. You grind it into powder or feed it fresh. It's been used in survival and food security projects in Southeast Asia for decades. It works. It's just not sexy. Next, stinging nettle. And yes, it stings. But once you blanch it or dry it, it's one of the most nutrient-dense greens on the planet. Nettle contains more iron than spinach, more calcium than kale, and 7% protein by dry weight. It's also high in vitamins A, C, K, and several B vitamins. It's been used for centuries as food, medicine, and fiber. It grows wild across most of North America and Europe. You don't even need to plant it. You just need to know where it is. Nettle grows in zones 3 through 10. It prefers rich, moist soil and partial shade, but it'll grow almost anywhere. It's perennial. It spreads aggressively. Some people call it invasive. But if you're looking for a plant that produces nutrient-dense greens every spring without planting, watering, or fertilizing, nettle is it. You harvest the young tops in spring before they flower. You wear gloves. You blanch them for 30 seconds or dry them completely. The sting comes from formic acid in tiny hairs on the leaves. Heat or drying destroys it. After that, nettle tastes like a mild, slightly earthy spinach. You can make soup, pesto, tea, or powder. The fact that most people see nettle as a nuisance weed instead of free food is a perfect example of how disconnected we've become. Our ancestors didn't have grocery stores. They had nettle, and they were healthier for it. Let's talk about something that used to be everywhere and now isn't. Lambsquarters, also called wild spinach or goosefoot. This plant grows in every agricultural field, every garden, every disturbed soil patch in North America. And it's more nutritious than almost anything you can buy. Lambsquarters contains more vitamin A than spinach, more calcium than milk, and more protein than cabbage. It's also high in iron, potassium, and vitamin C. It's been a staple food in Europe, Asia, and the Americas for thousands of years. Then industrial agriculture decided it was a weed. Because it competes with cash crops. Because it grows without permission. And because a plant that grows in every field for free undermines the need for seeds, fertilizer, and herbicides. Lambsquarters is now one of the most common targets of glyphosate. Not because it's harmful, because it's useful. You can grow lambsquarters intentionally by scattering seeds in early spring. It germinates in a week. You can start harvesting in 3 weeks. It self-seeds aggressively, so you plant it once and it comes back every year. The young leaves taste like spinach with a slightly nutty flavor. You eat them raw or cooked. The seeds are edible and were traditionally used like quinoa. If food prices keep rising, lambsquarters will be rediscovered. Not because it's trendy. Because it's everywhere and it's free. That's the kind of food security the system can't sell you. Now something most people think is ornamental. Nasturtium. The entire plant is edible. Leaves, flowers, seeds, roots. And it's one of the easiest crops you can grow. Nasturtium is high in vitamin C. The seeds taste like capers. The leaves are peppery, similar to arugula. The flowers are sweet and make dramatic salad garnishes. But more importantly, nasturtium is a trap crop. It attracts aphids away from other plants. It's a living pest management system. Nasturtium grows in zones 2 through 11. It tolerates poor soil, in fact it prefers it. Rich soil gives you leaves and no flowers. It needs full sun and moderate water. You direct seed after the last frost. It blooms in 60 days and keeps blooming until frost. It self-seeds in most climates. You harvest the leaves and flowers throughout the season. You harvest the seeds when they're green and pickle them like capers. The entire plant is edible and medicinal. It's been used traditionally as an antibiotic and immune booster. The reason nasturtium isn't taken seriously as food is because it's pretty. We've been taught that food is utilitarian and flowers are decorative. But that's a false divide. Nasturtium proves you can have both. And when you're trying to grow as much food as possible in a small space, every plant that multitasks matters. Let's talk about something that's been vilified for decades. Pigweed. Specifically Amaranth's wild cousin, often called Palmer amaranth or redroot pigweed. And I need to be clear. This is not the same as grain amaranth. But it's edible. And it's everywhere. Pigweed is classified as one of the most problematic agricultural weeds in North America. It's glyphosate resistant in many areas. It grows 6 feet tall in 60 days. It produces hundreds of thousands of seeds per plant. Farmers hate it. But here's what they don't tell you. The leaves are edible. The seeds are edible. And it's more nutritious than spinach. Pigweed leaves contain high levels of vitamins A and C, calcium, iron, and protein. The seeds are similar to quinoa. This plant was a staple food for indigenous peoples across the Americas. It wasn't a weed. It was a crop. But when European agriculture arrived, anything that grew without permission became a problem. You don't need to plant pigweed. It's already growing. You just need to recognize it and harvest the young leaves before it gets too tough. You can also let a few plants go to seed, thresh the seeds, and use them like any other grain. The fact that millions of dollars are spent every year trying to kill a plant that could feed people tells you everything about what we value. Next, chicory. The root is roasted and used as a coffee substitute. But the leaves are one of the best bitter greens you can grow, and bitter greens are what most modern diets are missing. Chicory is high in inulin, a prebiotic fiber that feeds beneficial gut bacteria. It's also high in vitamins A, C, and K, plus calcium and iron. The leaves are bitter, which stimulates digestion and supports liver function. This isn't just food. It's medicine. Chicory grows in zones 3 through 10. It's a perennial. It tolerates drought, poor soil, and neglect. It grows wild along roadsides across North America and Europe. You can forage it or grow it intentionally. You direct seed in spring or fall. The leaves are best harvested young. The roots are harvested in late fall after a frost, which converts the inulin to sugars and makes them sweet. Roasted chicory root tastes like coffee with a slightly woody, sweet flavor. It's caffeine-free. It was used as a coffee substitute during the Civil War and both World Wars. It's still common in New Orleans coffee blends. The fact that it's mostly forgotten elsewhere is a loss. If coffee becomes unaffordable or unavailable, chicory is the answer. And it's already growing in your ditch. Let's talk about something that grows in water. Watercress. This is one of the most nutrient-dense foods on Earth according to the CDC's Powerhouse Fruits and Vegetables list. It scores a perfect 100. Watercress is higher in vitamin C than oranges, higher in calcium than milk, higher in iron than spinach, and higher in folate than most greens. It contains compounds called glucosinolates, which have been studied for anti-cancer properties. It's peppery, crunchy, and grows faster than almost any other green. Watercress grows in zones 3 through 11. It needs shallow, clean, moving water. You can grow it in a container with a small pump. You can grow it in a ditch. You can grow it hydroponically. It's perennial in mild climates. You can start harvesting in 30 days. It regrows after cutting. The reason watercress isn't more common is because most people don't have a stream. But you don't need one. You just need water and a little creativity. If you're serious about nutrient density per square foot, watercress is one of the most efficient crops you can grow. Now let's talk about something that's been restricted in multiple states. Bamboo. And I'm not talking about the ornamental clumping varieties. I'm talking about running bamboo. The kind that spreads. The kind that's classified as invasive. The kind that can produce more edible biomass per acre than almost any other plant. Bamboo shoots are edible. They're high in fiber, low in calories, and a good source of potassium and B vitamins. In Asia, they're a staple vegetable. In the United States, they're considered a nuisance. Because bamboo spreads aggressively. Because it's hard to control. And because a plant that grows 12 inches per day and regenerates from the roots doesn't fit into the industrial food model. But here's the thing. If you're looking for food security, bamboo is one of the most productive crops on Earth. It grows in zones 5 through 11 depending on species. It tolerates poor soil, drought, and neglect. You plant it once, and it produces edible shoots every spring for decades. You can also use the canes for construction, tools, and fuel. The reason bamboo is restricted in some areas is because people plant it without containment and it takes over. But if you use root barriers or plant clumping varieties, it's manageable. And if the goal is producing as much food as possible with minimal input, bamboo deserves serious consideration. Finally, let's talk about wood sorrel, also called oxalis. This is another plant most people call a weed. And it's another plant that's more nutritious than half the produce aisle. Wood sorrel is high in vitamin C. It has a tart, lemony flavor from oxalic acid, the same compound in spinach and rhubarb. You eat it in moderation just like those. It grows wild across most of North America. It's perennial. It spreads by seed and rhizomes. It grows in sun or shade, poor soil or rich. You don't plant it. You just let it grow. You harvest the leaves and flowers throughout the growing season. You eat them raw in salads, blend them into drinks, or cook them like greens. The flavor is so bright and tangy that a handful can replace lemon juice in most recipes. The fact that wood sorrel is considered a lawn weed instead of a crop is absurd. It's edible, nutritious, beautiful, and requires zero maintenance. If you stopped spraying your lawn and started eating it, you'd have fresh greens from spring to fall. So let's review. Amaranth, Moringa, Katuk, Comfrey, Purslane, Chaya, Hemp, Duckweed, Nettle, Lambsquarters, Nasturtium, pigweed, chicory, watercress, bamboo, wood sorrel. 15 crops that are faster, cheaper, and more productive than most of what you're growing now. 15 crops that were staple foods, or still are in other parts of the world, but have been ignored, restricted, or vilified here. Because they make you independent. Because a backyard full of perennial greens, nitrogen-fixing shrubs, and self-seeding grains doesn't need a supply chain. It doesn't need a corporation. It doesn't generate profit for anyone but you. And as food prices rise, as supply chains tighten, as more people realize that resilience isn't a conspiracy theory, these plants will be rediscovered. Not by institutions. By individuals. People like you. If you're growing any of these or you've run into legal or social resistance, drop a comment. Let's document what's actually happening on the ground. Because the official story and the reality are not the same. This is how you take control. One plant, one season, one harvest at a time. I'll see you in the next one.